Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to yet another History of episode. Now of course, in celebration of this week's amazing trailer reveal, I thought that what better way could we commemorate Takeda's reveal than by doing a deep dive retrospective of the character's history, touching on his origins from the shadow, and learn of what really made Takeda so unique in the Reboot trilogy. So much so that he's now finally returned in the new era, far earlier than any of his compatriots. Now, for the sake of streamlining this video and making it as accurate as possible, especially for you newer viewers, I do want to point out I will be primarily focusing on his appearances in Mortal Kombat X, as well as what little information we do have of him in Mortal Kombat 11. Because there's a fair few characters that do name drop him in passing, possibly hinting at his whereabouts during Kronika's arrival. And of course, to address the elephant in the room here, that does mean I will be excluding the Mortal Kombat X comic book line, because whilst Takeda is a main significant character during that run, and it was initially canonical on its release, they were eventually pseudo-retconned in 2020, where fragments of it are canon but bits of it aren't. The best way to understand it is that whatever you hear of in-game that references it is what you can deem as canon, whereas the rest of the events of the comic itself are anything but that. I know it's a bit complicated, but I do hope that this does clear it all up. So understandably, for the sake of consistency, I will be excluding them here. However, I do already have a previous and much older History of Takeda video, when it was initially canon, where I do touch on the events of that comic. So if you're interested in actually seeing what goes on there, I will have it timestamped and available to watch in the corner right now. But before we do start, as always, if you like what we do here and you're very excited to see Takeda return, please do give this video a thumbs up, as whilst it's a small thing, it really goes a very long way here with supporting both this video and the channel in the algorithm. Along with that, I do have another Takeda video planned for this week, exploring his family, his lineage, as well as Sento itself. So feel free to sub if you're interested in that. But anyway, let's dive into things. Now Takeda's first ever in-game appearance would be Mortal Kombat X, as part of the new generation of Special Forces operatives, designed to be the new heroes of this particular generation. But the origin of his tale is actually one that long predates the events of MKX, because following Shao's defeat and Shinnok's invasion, Takeda would be born in the fallout of these events at an undisclosed time in between the 20-year gap of Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat X. It's here we come to learn that Takeda is the son of the infamous blind swordsman Ken Shi and a Thai woman by the name of Su Chin. Little is actually known of the early years of his life, only that he was essentially raised by his mother and did live a relatively peaceful one. In fact, the reason behind all of this was due to Kenshi's occupation, as following the events of Shao's defeat, Kenshi had been recruited by the Special Forces and worked very closely alongside them to combat threats both outside and within Earthrealm, with it most infamously pitting him against the likes of Shinnok and then later the Red Dragon clan. The clear details around this time are quite sketchy, but it's widely believed he had infiltrated the ranks of the Red Dragons, a criminal organization that lurked from the shadows. But it's also around this time period where he would meet Sushin, and not long after, begin a relationship together. Now of course, due to the threat and danger his occupation posed, Kenshi understandably kept his relationship with Suchin very private, believing that by doing so, he could protect her from his job. Yet one day, his fears of the worst would inevitably come to light, as once his identity was revealed, the Red Dragon would strike, and immediately went underway with not just wanting to hunt him down, but kill everyone close to him. Knowing of their venomous intent, Kenshi would immediately set off to Thailand, hoping to protect Suchin and bring her back to the Special Forces base. Sadly though, by the time he arrived, it was already too late, as Suchin was murdered by none other than the leader of the Red Dragons himself, Dagon. The one thing he hadn't accounted for though was a survivor from the attack, a very young man by the name of Takeda. Now, according to Kenshi's bio from MKX, following his recruitment into the Red Dragons, Kenshi had absolutely no idea that Tsuchin had given birth, as there was no contact between the two for 8 long years, making Kenshi practically a stranger to the young Takeda. Feeling the weight of such a responsibility placed on his shoulders, Kenshi knew that the life he led was not one for a child, and understandably, to prevent the last remaining part of Tsuchin to fade away, Kenshi was forced to make the heartbreaking choice of sending his son to the Shirai Ryu, under the care of Hanzo Hasashi, the former Scorpion. You see, the Grandmaster was in debt to the swordsman, as it was he that assisted him in his rehabilitation following his return to humanity, a debt he would happily pay, as Hanzo was quite keen to restart the Shirai Ryu. Thus, he would take on Takeda as a new pupil and student. However, Kenshi had one condition on this deal, but Hanzo promises to tell Takeda that his mother perished in an accident, as he wished to keep the boy far away from the dark path he looked to tread. So this would be Kenshi's last will and act before suddenly disappearing. From here, Takeda would begin his training within the Shirai Ryu, learning their style of combat, their customs, and what it really meant to be a part of the Shirai Ryu, as funnily enough, the clan's founder would be of the same name. By training under Hanzo, he was able to develop his own style of combat that, while similar to his master, had this unique flair that made it very different. Whilst he utilized the signature Shirai teleport, Takeda would also have his own spin on the roped kunai, utilizing razor whips instead. He was honestly quite a prodigy amongst the clan, excelling as Hanzo's best pupil. Because of this, the two developed a very close bond, with Takeda seeing Hanzo as more of a father figure than a teacher. And due to this, Takeda would wish to never talk about his father Kenshi, as he understandably felt quite bitter and resentful that his father took no responsibility after his mother's accident. Over the course of 10 long years, Takeda would finally participate in the Shirai Ryu Chunin exams, testing his skills against Hanzo and even besting him in combat. Unfortunately, unknown to Takeda, this day would be the one which he would finally confront his father, who did praise him for being the youngest Chujin in the clan's history. But such flattery fell on deaf ears. Understandably outraged by the nerve of Kenshi, Takeda would attack his father, beating him down and releasing a decade's worth of pent-up frustration and anger. It is only stopped once Hanzo steps in, telling Takeda to listen to his father. And it's from his lips to which Takeda finally learns the truth, the fate of his mother, his disappearance, and why he placed him in the care of Hanzo. Although the swordsman knew that deep down, Takeda could never forgive him for the years he missed, Kenshi did wish to give him whatever time he had left as father and son. Thus, the two would reconcile, with wounds slowly being mended over time. Upon completing his trials at the Shirai Ryu, he would take after his father in telepathy and telekinesis, but at a very minor level, as it's for the most part only reflected in some QTEs and gameplay. By joining Kenshi's side, Takeda would then be recruited into the Special Forces, part of their new division for young and thriving operatives. And this team would be led by Cassandra Cage, daughter of actor Johnny Cage, and Special Forces leader Sonya Blade, Kung Jin, a strained cousin of Kung Lao and former professional thief, and finally Jackie Briggs, daughter of Jackson Briggs and an Olympic-level Muay Thai specialist. Together, they were designed to be the next generation of Earthrealm defenders. And whilst on paper they are a formidable force, their conflicting personalities, lack of cooperation, and team structure is what sows turmoil amongst them very early on. As during a debrief with Johnny Cage, approach. Kong Jin would make some snide comments that does rub Cassie Cage the wrong way, asking if the green energy did skip a generation. It's also around this time period where Takeda starts to romantically pursue Jackie Briggs. Their first mission as a team would take them to the Lin Kuei Temple, where here they would be tasked with escorting Sub-Zero back to their headquarters. Sadly though, this plan very quickly falls apart, as Kong Jin denies Cassie's orders and completely blows their cover, leading to a more direct and confrontational approach. Here, Takeda would go one-on-one with his Grandmaster's former rival, and whilst his skills are commendable, he's simply outmatched by Kuai Liang's raw experience. Thus, they are defeated one by one, but learn in the aftermath that this was all merely a training exercise. Something to teach them about what they lacked and what could they learn from. Licking their wounds, once they returned back to the Special Forces headquarters, it's from Li Mei which they would learn of how bad Outworld Civil War had become, and that the fallen Empress Melina was now in possession of Shinnok's amulet, a powerful weapon of dark magic thought to have been locked away. Takeda and his team would be dispatched to Outworld to confront the current Khan, Kotal the Oztec, hoping to bargain with him and build an alliance between both sides, as a united front could stop her rebellion. Yet, in the middle of an Outworld market, with the team bearing witness to a public execution, Kong Jin would immediately spring into action, causing a riot to break out amongst the crowd. During this battle, Takeda is very nearly crushed by the symbiotic pair of Ferrator until Jin intervenes. And as the commotion dies down, they do finally get their audience with the Khan, only for the Oztec to wish them to be executed for their crimes. That is until Jin is able to bargain with him, besting him in combat and earning their trust. By working together, Melina's rebellion is indeed crumbled, with the Empress herself being turned into bug food. However, it's here where the Khan would turn on Takeda and his allies, believing that the most trusted hands were his own. Thus, he would imprison them in the Outworld docks, wishing to use them as a bargaining chip should Raiden interfere. Now, during their imprisonment, this is where the team would really bond, using this time to reflect and clear their minds. By entering a state of calm and utilizing his telepathy, Takeda is able to render a guard completely unconscious, stealing his keys as he does escape. But as this goes underway, multiple other cogs start to turn and twist in motion, with it being revealed that Devora was secretly aligned with Shinnok this whole time, using her place at Kotal's high table to steal the amulet. By breaking free, their team is forced to battle the likes of the gunslinger Eren Black, the Saurian Reptile, and the Master of Souls Ermac, with the Takahashi besting each and every one of them. When they do finally return to their headquarters, they come to the realization that they are far too late. Shinnok had been unleashed, and the heart of Earthrealm, the Jinsei Chamber, had been corrupted, with Grandmaster Hanzo fatally wounded, and Kenshi in very dire straits. Takeda and his team are left as the last and best option to stave off Shinnok's assault. But this is not a trip so easily achieved, having been confronted by Kotal at the base of the Sky Temple, with the Khan believing that by taking their heads, he could in turn buy more time for Outworld. And this battle in particular would really push Takeda to his physical limits, as he's nearly blinded by Reptile, having acid spat in his face until it's cleared away by Jackie. He would battle the likes of War God Kotal Khan, and then go one-on-one with Tor. The sheer overwhelming numbers proved to be far too much, until the Lin Kuei intervenes, giving them enough time and breathing space to reach the Sky Temple, to which he does nearly fall to his death. It's here where Takeda would truly be tested as a fighter, forced to battle the Revenant heroes of old in a last-ditch effort to save Earthrealm. Here, he is stabbed, kicked, and punched, overwhelmed by the likes of Kitana, Smoke, Kung Lao, Liu Kang, and Sindel. He's only really able to survive by having Jackie by his side, holding the line and giving Cassie the time she needs in order to defeat Shinnok. By doing so, she succeeds, and the Jinsei is purified of Shinnok's poison. In defeat, the Revenants would retreat, giving us all a very brief but cathartic moment in which Takeda takes Jackie's hand, being the light that would spark the torch for their relationship. Now, unfortunately from this point forth, this is canonically the last time we do physically see Takeda in-game, as he is entirely absent during the events of Mortal Kombat 11. However, there are quite a few intros as well as some arcade ladder endings that do somewhat foreshadow what may have become of him during this time period, as it's strongly hinted at and believed that after Shinnok's defeat, Takeda and his father would finally set off on their revenge mission against Dagon, and with it being under the service of the Special Forces, it is considered to be covert ops. Hence both his and Kenshi's disappearance in-game. Sadly, due to the shadowy nature of this mission, we do not know if he actually succeeded in such a venture. In fact, the only certainty that we do have is that his relationship with Jackie would blossom into something so much more. Because in between the time period of X to 11, Takeda would actually propose to her, meaning that by the events of 11, they are engaged. Sadly though, due to the rise of Chronica and the timeline having been reset, it does mean that tragically we'd never get to see the pairing once again. So this brings us onto the new era, forged in Liu Kang's vision and canvas. So what has become of him in the present here? Well, we do finally have an official character bio that does have a few tweaks to his origin, as it does say the following. Similar to his cousin Kenshi, Takeda Takahashi was raised a Yakuza. Unlike him, Takeda enjoyed this lifestyle. That's why he was chosen to end Kenshi's crusade against his masters. The fight mortally wounded Takeda. Unwilling to let his cousin die, Kenshi rushed him to the nearest help, the Shirai Ryu. Even after Takeda was healed, Kenshi wouldn't release him. He feared that the Yakuza might kill him for failing his mission. Takeda resisted, attempting to escape repeatedly. But as the months passed, he began to appreciate the Shirai Ryu's selfless commitment to Earthrealm, a contrast to his past life. Takeda swore to rip up Earthrealm's underworld by the roots, but he soon learns they are stronger and more tangled than he ever thought possible. So it does look like in the new era, things have been slightly tweaked and altered for the present. Even so, with all of these changes and alterations, there's still echoes and ideas of the past that ripple in the present, with Kenshi still playing a mentor role, and of course his inevitable enrollment in the Shirai Ryu. Going forth, we just do have to see how he now fits into the new era. And woo, like that, this has been it for the history of Takeda. And I do hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. Takeda's always been a personal favourite of mine from the Reboot trilogy, as his very interesting origin and background, very flashy playstyle, and charismatic personality made him a very pleasant inclusion in MKX. So it does make me very happy to see him return in the present, even with the changes and alterations here, as it's clearly been done to make his return possible in the new era. So, with that said, what are your thoughts on Takeda? What was your favourite moments with this character? And what do you think of his return and the changes he's undergone? But for now everyone, that's been it for me. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting. I'll catch you in the next one.